And good morning. Here we are once again, Wednesday Talk Radio here on KBOO. I'm Paul Rowan. We do have with us on the line, on the phone, Chris Hedges. Chris Hedges, I'm sure everyone knows, is a Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist, Princeton professor, and Presbyterian minister. He's written many, many books, many of which you've heard about or heard from him about them here on KBOO. I last spoke with him last year. We talked about his book, Wages of Rebellion, The Moral Imperative of Revolt. He's going to be coming to Portland in just a week and a half. Anyway, he's also a columnist for the progressive news and commentary website Truth Dig, where I often pick up his stuff, including a couple of recent pieces we're going to refer to today. He's also a host for the television program On Contact on Russia Today. He spent nearly 2 decades as a foreign correspondent in Central America, West Asia, Africa, the Middle East, and the Balkans. And I could go on and on. This is reading from his Wikipedia entry. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning.
So everybody probably would be interested in hearing your opinions. I don't know if you want to talk about them. There's so many things to talk about what's currently going on. Everything just seems to be breaking out. Is this just more subterfuge? Do you think this is going to lead to anything? Obviously I'm talking about Comey and Flynn and Trump. Do you have any, what's not being talked about?
Well, what's not being talked about is the 4-decade-long destruction of our democratic institutions and the creation of internal forces of security, including the police, but not limited to the police, FBI, Homeland Security, the NSA, and their wholesale surveillance, which are beyond the reach of any kind of scrutiny, beyond the reach of the law. The use of corporate-funded foundations and organizations that have seized control of the press, the courts, the universities, scientific research, as well as, of course, the Democratic and Republican parties, the stripping away of our most basic constitutional rights, privacy, due process, habeas corpus, fair elections, the right for dissent, and the kind of burlesque and political theater that characterizes electoral campaigns. Trump, of course, is a creation of the corporate-dominated media systems, first with his reality show The Apprentice, but later because he made money for CNN. CNN had its most profitable year ever last year. I think they spent more time filming an empty podium waiting for Trump, arguably, than they even gave to Bernie Sanders, 23 times the amount of time they gave to Sanders, because he was good for ratings. He was good for profits, as the head of CBS said. So our situation is far more serious than Trump. He kind of personifies the rot within the system. He's kind of the face of the system. The mask is removed, and behind it we see what's there. And the deep state, which finds Trump, of course, an embarrassment, may move to remove him, but that doesn't in any way mitigate the problem. In fact, it only solidifies even more the power of the deep state.
Well, it seems like he was, he basically set something. I mean, obviously, this has been in motion for a way long time, but there seems to be a new phase that he helped set in motion that probably will not be stemmed by him being removed. I just picked up your book, actually started reading the first couple chapters, American Fascists, the Christian Right and the War on America, which I find, I think everybody should absolutely read this book and all your other books too. But do you see, I see this as being very prescient as what's going on. Do you see that what's happening now sort of playing out what you wrote about in American Fascists?
Yes, because Trump has no real ideological system. He's a narcissist and a megalomaniac, and that ideological void is being filled by the Christian fascists. I actually don't use that word lightly. I have a divinity school degree. I'm actually ordained as a Presbyterian minister. The Christian right are heretics. They have infused their belief system with the worst aspects of American imperialism, racism, chauvinism, and given it the cloak or the veneer of Christianity. They have merged the iconography and language of the Christian religion with the iconography and language of the American state. During the rise of the Nazis, they created what the so-called German Christian Church, which did much the same thing. And I fault the liberal church, which I come out of, maybe the radical church, since I grew up in a household where we were all followers of Dorothy Day and the Berrigans. But I fault them for not naming these people for who they are. And they are embodied in a figure like Mike Pence. And we are seeing them seize major positions within government, figures like Betsy DeVos. You have, climate change deniers. And I, even without Trump, I don't see, as long as Pence remains in power, I see us headed towards a dystopia. In fact, things may be worse under Pence.
But we got a break very briefly. As I told you, we're in our membership drive. This is a really great opportunity to hear the voice of Chris Hedges. It's also a great moment to support community radio station where you're able to hear Chris, not just today, but over the years, repeatedly. We bring you voices like his and so many others who are talking about the reality behind the veneer of the spectacle of modern American culture. And I believe we have some tickets to give away for his talk coming up in a week and a half at the Aladdin Theater, both May 26th and 27th. He's has two events. And we also have a former Wednesday Talk radio show host, Lisa Loving, and Abe, who's one of the hosts for Tuesday Talk Radio, also with us.
We're all hosting up. We're just hosting up over here.
Yep.
But we are strongly encouraging people to make this is our beautiful spring membership party. It's the time of the year. It's one of the few times of the year anymore when we open up and say, hey, join us. Come over here. We're mobilizing for you listeners to invest in what we do and to participate with us. So we're asking you to go get your phone. Okay? And dial, what are they going to dial?
They're going to dial 1-877-500-5266.
And we're asking you to make a $20 a month contribution. For that, you will get a pair of tickets to the Friday speech by Chris Hedges, Friday, May 26th. Also, though, if you wanted instead, you could $20 a month would instead get you tickets to the Saturday, May 27th, Chris Hedges and Joe Sacco conversation. That one right there, that's going to blow my mind, that conversation between these two people. Of course, Chris Hedges, the genius, actually, I'm going to say Chris, the compassionate foreign correspondent guy, right? And Joe Sacco, who is he was trained as a journalist, went to the University of Oregon and went, I don't know if I relate to this, and he became a cartoonist instead. Chris and Joe got together and did an important book. These people talking about fascism, about stopping fascism. This is literally the message that you're really not going to get in very many public media outlets. I'm putting that out. 877-500-5266. What were you going to say, Abe?
Well, I was going to say we probably should not think too deeply on how easy it is to pivot from journalism to cartooning.
Okay.
So let's not think too deeply on that.
Good point.
But
fellow journalist.
That's right. But we do want you to think deeply. In fact, I'd wager that you do, on a regular basis, think deeply. And that's why you're tuned into the sound of my voice right now. That's why you're tuned in to the AM News and Public Affairs programming here on KBOO, because it helps you to be a thinking citizen of this republic at a time when we need that more than ever before.
You know what I'm saying, Abe? I'm saying that when we have this kind of programming, we're popping a few bubbles out there. We're breaking through a few people's bubbles, and we're trying to show people what's really going on around them. The things that we're so distracted from paying attention to. 877 888-500-5266. We need people to start calling this number now, okay? We need some people to jump on board this morning. I don't know what y'all are doing, but focus in. This is an incredible interview, an incredible opportunity. We'd love to see you in person. We're at 20 Southeast 8, but we need people to step up right now.
877-500-5266. Give us a call.
And then back to Paul.
And thank you. And we did hear that one phone ring. I'd like to hear more. And we're back with Chris Hedges. So you just take off where we were just at, talking about the general failure of the liberal church to step in. I don't know if you got a chance to read this article called Mind Struggle about Richard Spencer in The Atlantic. Did you happen to catch that?
No.
It's I'm sure you know as much or more about Richard Spencer than I do. But there's just one line from it that really got to me, that he's sort of got this permanent sort of sneering grin on his face. There's a guy who went and interviewed him a couple times because he's just so lucky to be at this historical moment where the alt-right, so-called alt-right, these fascist tendencies are able to, he feels like they're winning the day, and that energy, that malevolent energy of the heretical Christianity, the anti-Christianity that you're talking about. I mean, he claims to be a Christian. They claim that and Steve Bannon claim that they're sort of, bringing a Christian state into being.
Well, yeah, I mean, I am not going to defend the role of the institutional church throughout history, which is, probably butchered and persecuted more people than almost any other institution we have, given its longevity. But there was, of course, a huge theological shift in the 3rd century with the rise of Constantine, and you had mandarins such as Aquinas and Augustine brought in to essentially rewrite Christian theology to justify its seizure of temporal power, which was, I think, an anathema certainly to the early Christians and the early Jews. I mean, both the Hebrew Bible and the Greek Bible were written by communities under severe oppression. So there's a long history. The Vatican was a pretty flagrant supporter of fascism in Italy, to a lesser extent in Germany, but certainly it was there, certainly backed Franco in Spain. So, but they are Christian fascists, and they have the attributes of fascists, a binary worldview, a belief that violence can be used to purge society of evil, the externalization of evil. Evil is embodied in the dehumanized other, whether those are Muslims. I mean, this is one of the reasons that I've been so fierce in my criticism of the new atheists, people like Sam Harris and the late Christopher Hitchens, because ideologically, although they didn't use religious language, they fell exactly into the same kind of fundamentalist mindset. In their case, it's the defense of Western civilization, but ideologically or politically, they converge with the Christian right because they are precisely the same. With these people in power are extremely frightening because they are utopians. We don't often, use that word in a positive way, but they're utopians in a sense that they believe they can use massive acts of social engineering, including violence, to create a beautiful world, and they will stop at nothing. And the more frustrated they get, the more violent they get. They're the heir to the Jacobins, who led to the fascists, who led to the Stalinists. That kind of frightening, dark, dystopian undercurrent is now rising to the surface within American society because our own democracy no longer functions. And fascism or totalitarian movements always rise out of a failed market economy, a failed system. When a cabal, whether it's monarchical or fascist or communist or whatever, seizes power and exclusively serves the interests of a tiny elite, once the rest of the population begins to understand, as I think this will happen, that they are not only being excluded, but persecuted and oppressed, in this case, sacrificed for corporate profit, then you need the harsher forms of control. We just saw the information about Trump meeting with Comey and talking about locking up journalists. Take a look at Turkey, what Erdogan has done to journalists in Turkey. That's how authoritarian systems work. When the ideology becomes less and less credible and finally loses credibility, then they resort to the iron fist. And I think that's where we're headed, with or without Trump.
Well, we're about to take another break. I do want to let listeners know that we will be talking about the prospects for resistance, which is how I titled this. And I know that's what you're going to be talking a lot about as well when you come to Portland. So, we can't just fold up our arms and lay down and let it all happen. As it does seem to be happening, a lot of people are still somewhat in shock. A lot of people are in denial. I mean, we've been in denial for a heck of a long time, whether it's a sort of a new age form of denial, whether it's just sort of this, why can't we all just get along? I know you opened your book, American Fascists, with a Karl Popper quote, which I'd like to maybe start our next segment by talking about. But as I did mention, we are in our membership drive, and we really would like to see people step up and support. This is a place where you can get people doing some form of courageous attempt to let people know what's going on. We do worry a little bit about what the repression. I mean, we're somewhat insulated from the state stepping in to broadcast journalism. We're not like National Public Broadcasting. We don't have a huge amount of investment from the state itself. We are supported by the community, which provides us that. But we're a very open place, and so we do somewhat worry about what the incursions, if these things do step up. So we do need, this community needs to really come together in all sorts of different ways. One of those ways is to support community radio. Right, Lisa and Abe?
Yes, Paul. You are so correct. That's why you need to support community radio. Why?
Do it now.
Because you're the community, and we are your radio station, and without you, we don't exist. It's clear cut. It's unambiguous. It's
877
the way things are.
500-5266 is the number to call to basically invest in what you're hearing, invest in a media movement that is independent, right? The reason that we can be talking with Chris Hedges, be bringing him to Portland to talk about stopping fascism is because we are an independent grassroots radio station. And keep making this happen. Come in person. We love your bright and shining morning face. We've got bagels. We've got coffee. We're at 20 Southeast 8th in Portland, Oregon. By the way, that's one of the things that really makes us super unique. We have a front door and you can come in it. Believe it. Unbelievable. You can call us on the phone. There's real people here. 877-500-5266 is the number to call. We're strongly encouraging $20 a month memberships. Super strongly this morning. For $20 a month contribution, you can get tickets to see Chris Hedges. Listen to him Friday, May 26th. Listen to his lecture. Paul's going to be emceeing that event, I believe. That's for $20 a month. Or for $20 a month, you could go see Chris Hedges and Joe Sacco in their conversation about how to stop fascism. That's going to be actually, that would be the one to take your kids to. I'm putting that out, okay? 877-500-5266. Give us a call. Make an investment. We really need to make those phones ring, y'all.
All right, we want to thank James in Salem who called up to renew his membership. Thank you, James, for your continued support. We love renewed members here at KBOO. But you know who we like more, Lisa?
New members.
Brand new members. That's correct.
We just estimate a lot of people listen who have never made a contribution. It's not that we like new members more, right? It's like, make new friends, and some are gold and some are silver, whatever. I can't remember all the words of that. But we really want to encourage people. If you do give us a call, 877-500-5266, and you make a contribution, swear to God, the whole radio station sounds different. The whole thing sounds different because you own it.
That's right.
You own it.
Yeah, it's sort of a magical transformation that happens. But it's not magic, it's easy. It's so easy. You just pick up the phone and dial 877-500-5266 right now for a contribution of $20 a month. You can get 2 tickets to one of the shows that Lisa just talked to you about.
Chris Hedges Against Fascism.
Chris Hedges. And let me tell you something. There's a whole lot of ways you can spend $20 a month. I could fill an entire hour talking about ways to spend $20 a month. But none of those ways brings you the sort of information, the sort of news programming, the sort of music programming that comes to you every month from KBOO.
It's true. And one of the things I always like to challenge people, if there's an issue that's really important that you heard about in depth for the first time on KBOO, you should be calling us up, 877-500-5266. Global climate change, climate disruption. That's one that I never heard anyone talk intelligently or seriously about it until I heard it discussed years ago for the first time on KBOO. That's what we do. We are the vanguard of information. You'll hear about something about the CIA or the FBI, something that you feel unsure about, like, oh, that's just paranoia stuff, right? You'll hear something on KBOO about that, and then the next day you'll be reading about it in the New York Times. I'm saying that's the way I've seen it work for years.
Yes.
877-500-5266. If you're stuck in traffic, make a contribution using your cell phone on the website, kboo.fm. Go there, click on the donate button. It's easy to do. But we really need people to call. $20 a month. We'd love to see you in person. Probably a lot of people listening are already a member. Okay? If you are, come in person, 20 Southeast 8th. I'll toast you a bagel and just empty out your wallet on the table. Do it. This matters more than ever right now. And we want to go back to Chris Hedges and Paul Rowland, and thanks to everyone who has called.
And we're back again. And I am speaking with Chris Hedges here live on the telephone. He's again going to be with us in a week and a half. So I was talking about this quote from Karl Popper. I'm just going to read it really briefly here. Unlimited tolerance must lead to the disappearance of tolerance. If we extend unlimited tolerance even to those who are intolerant, if we are not prepared to defend a tolerant society against the onslaught of the intolerant, then the tolerant will be destroyed and tolerance with them. And it goes on for a long, long paragraph. I'd like to get your take on that, given the current situation.
Well, Popper's right. It's actually a footnote in his book, the first volume of The Open Society and Its Enemies. Tolerance, a word Martin Luther King never used. There are certain things you can't tolerate in a civil society. Racism, hate talk, Islamophobia, all of these things have to be prevented from becoming normalized. And unfortunately, they have been normalized by a commercial media that cares only about raking in profits. In a functioning democracy, a figure like Trump or a figure like Roger Stone, who's kind of the dark force behind Trump. First, his lawyer, of course, was Roy Cohn, which is arguably one of the most evil figures in American history. He was McCarthy's counsel and sent the Rosenbergs to the electric chair, and just an absolutely vicious. But Stone is not far behind, and so Stone will say things that he knows are patently untrue, as does Trump. But the media loves it because it's part of the burlesque, part of the vaudevillian atmosphere that has infected systems of information, including news. The whole fact that Fox News is now mainstream. I mean, Fox News figures are being hired away by MSNBC and CNN. And so it's really the media's fault for sinking to their level because it's salacious. I mean, just a small example was when Stone and these Wall Street figures went after Elliot Spitzer, and Stone put out that Elliot Spitzer was having sex with prostitutes with his socks on. Well, I mean, I think all of the networks that broadcast that understood it wasn't true, but it was just so, so entertaining and so attractive as a piece of propaganda that it got disseminated all over the networks, and this has just been writ large across the media landscape, which is how a figure like Trump is given the kind of prominence and airtime that in a functioning democracy he would never get. Even now, they can't kind of resist the allure of Trump because he's good for their revenue stream, and that's all these news media organizations have become. Is they've been bought up by huge corporations, so it's not that they're owned by CBS or the old Hearst newspaper empire. They are one of many, many revenue streams, and they compete against other revenue streams, and their worth is determined by the revenue that they bring in, and that has just plunged us into this kind of moral and intellectual swamp that is fertile ground for a figure like Trump.
Which is, of course, why people in the independent media need to really step up and take way more seriously our role. I don't know if you have any thoughts about how the independent media have been stepping up in these times.
Well, the independent media mean like KBOO and Pacifica and, of course, Amy Goodman, who's great, but they're marginal within the media landscape. NPR and PBS, of course, has been gutted and is now a wholly owned subsidiary of the Koch brothers.
But don't you notice they seem to be changing their tone a little bit? I mean, it's not too late, too little, too late. But have you noticed that? I don't know how much you listen to them, but they do seem.
I don't have a TV, so okay. NPR drives me crazy. I used to work for them. You just can't wade through the garbage with the musicians and the
I guess I meant more radio. I don't watch TV either, but
right.
Yeah.
I don't think NPR is very good. Okay. I think NPR does not ever deal with a fundamental issue, which is corporate power or imperialism. Even Bernie Sanders wouldn't go there. The forces of the military industrial complex, to quote Eisenhower, is just so unassailable that as well as the whole sort of projects of imperialism, that to take it on is suicide now within the public arena. So any real criticism of this hollowing out of the country by these military or these defense contractors and this military complex, any real criticism of how corporate power has destroyed institutions from, of course, not only the media but academia and the two parties. That's not spoken about. We personalize politics. So yes, they will attack Trump, but Trump is the creation of a dysfunctional and decayed system. And unless we start speaking about that reality, we may get rid of Trump, but we will, vomit up another monstrosity.
Well, I'm going to shift into that issue of resistance to what's going down. I know you were somewhat critical of the black bloc in certain circumstances a number of years ago. You got
somewhat.
into.
You're being kind to me.
Well,
I call them the cancer of Occupy.
Okay. Well, that's a long conversation we could have, but I wanted to sort of get at the issue of you're talking about not tolerating intolerance, and I'm sure must have been following somewhat the whole controversy over Antifa, the people who go after the fascists in the street in various situations where there's like that guy Milos was speaking and
right.
and such. So we had some episodes here in Portland where there's some white nationalists who were meeting up in my neighborhood on 82nd Avenue, and they actually did something that you referred to in one of your books. They had a collective reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance, which kind of made my skin crawl. So there's something very eerie and dangerous in that. They seemed, I don't know, they didn't feel all that dangerous because they were such a motley crew. But, they're the kind of people who, and they were obviously a lot of people came out to resist them, and it didn't devolve into street fighting as some of the other situations did. But, there's definitely some links, I think, between the milieu that is characterized as the Black Bloc and the Antifa. I mean, they're people who consider themselves and seem to be on the front lines of fighting, and obviously fascism in its incarnations in Spain and in Italy and Germany rode into power also on the brown and black shirts and their street fighting gangs that need to be resisted. So you talk about resisting intolerance, and these are some people who are doing it.
Of course, but the question is, what is the effective form of resistance?
Mm-hmm.
And what is it that shakes the foundations of the ruling elites? Well, it's when 10,000 people, as they did, surround the Spanish Parliament. It's not when a bunch of kids with bandanas over their mouths and dressed in black throw bricks at police. That's a game the state is always going to win, because vigilante violence, and Richard Hofstadter wrote about this in his last book, has always been part of the American landscape, white vigilante violence, and it has been used effectively to repress and terrorize not only people of color, and in particular African Americans, but also dissidents. So we had the bloodiest labor wars in the industrialized world. Hundreds of American workers were murdered by gun thugs and Baldwin Felts and Pinkertons and state militias. And these forces ostensibly are not governmental forces, but they become allied in moments of distress. So look at the Bundys, who have all their weapons out there taking over this wildlife refuge. Basically, they just walked away, most of them. Imagine if they were black. They would have set up the saws, and that would have been it. These are light machine guns. And so it's a question of what's effective. And the end of my book, American Fascists, which I spent 2 years writing, and I spent most of that time with these groups, going to pro-life weekends and creationist seminars and all this kind of stuff. I really came to the conclusion that the only way to blunt the movement is to reintegrate them into the economy, give them a sense of hope, a sense of stability, that we're not going to argue them out of their belief system. We're certainly not going to terrorize them out of their belief system. The language of violence is the primary language by which they speak. And to match or attempt to kind of match that violence for violence is just what the state wants. That's a game that we're never going to win. And then you have the whole issue of how do you build a mass movement, and the problem with the Black Bloc is that they graft themselves onto nonviolence, as they did in Berkeley, or they did in Oakland during Occupy, uninvited. And the state loves it because, first of all, they're heavily infiltrated, as we've seen, when that cop in Berkeley pulled off his mask and pulled out a gun. They allow the state to demonize the mass movement. And you read any counterinsurgency manual, and they will tell you that is the primary goal. They have to demonize the movement and make people afraid of joining it. So it's for me, it's a matter of what's effective. And I don't think that going into the street to carry out acts of resistance is about catharsis or about how we feel, or what Black Bloc activists will call feral acts of spontaneous disruption. The goal, and it's explicitly stated by Trump and the people around him, is to take voices like yours or mine and shut them down and silence them. And the way that they will do that is by tying us. And I sued Obama in federal court over Section 1021 of the National Defense Authorization Act, which overturns the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act, which prohibits the military from acting as a domestic police force. We won in the Southern District Court of New York, and then the Obama administration appealed, and both the Second Circuit and we filed a petition to the Supreme Court wouldn't hear the case. They denied my standing to bring the case. But in the case of that, we used the leaked emails by Jeremy Hammond from Stratford, where there's a back and forth between this private security firm and federal officials attempting to link Occupy groups, in particular a group named Days of Rage, to terrorists by saying, well, do any of these groups appear on any website, and then we can charge them with terrorism laws. We're just not going to win that battle. It's not going to work. Part of my anger, I remember talking to Ishmael Reed, a great writer and playwright, and in Oakland, who was kind of baffled, along with much of the African-American leadership in Oakland, by the Black Bloc. He said, look, they come down here, they throw rocks through some window in Oakland. He said, I'll drive them up to La Jolla, and they can throw rocks through Romney's window. I don't care. What are they doing this in a poor neighborhood for? So it's a matter of what's going to work. And having covered revolutions, in particular in Eastern Europe, in East Germany, which was the most efficient security and surveillance state in human history until our own, I watched how these movements are brought down. And people, fighting colonial or occupation, that's another form. Is happening in Gaza or Iraq, or that often does require violence. But revolutions are fundamentally, and you can read Crane Brinton and Jeffrey Davies, the other great theorists on revolution, are fundamentally nonviolent movements where significant sectors in the civil service, the bureaucracy, and in particular the services of internal security either will not move against demonstrators, as I saw in Eastern Europe, or it will defect. And then you're finished. And this has happened, whether it was the French Revolution with people, Louis the 16th soldiers joining the kind of the National Guard, whether it was the Cossacks joining the demonstrators in Petrograd during the bread riots, forcing the Tsar to abdicate, whether it was the paratroopers, as happened, being sent down by Erich Honecker in the fall of 1989. I was there to Leipzig to shoot on the crowd, and they refused to shoot on the crowd. That's what we've got to do. We're not going to overthrow, and that is a word I don't use lightly, this corporate state unless we build allies within it who won't defend it.
Well, that led to another question, which I want to ask, but that would lead to another long response. So I think I'll just hold off on that. I was going to talk about the fundamental wedge that's been created between the liberal class, which includes elements that you're talking about, within the state, and the radical faction, which tends to often be the force that moves things in a more a direction towards change or overthrowing. And so I feel like we're in a really perilous time because there doesn't seem to be much of an organic connection anymore, and that might be what partially leads to phenomena like the frustration of young people who feel like there is no future.
Well, all of that is true. I wrote a book called The Death of the Liberal Class.
Right.
The liberal class is completely bankrupt. I am full agreement.
Let's get into that when we return in a few minutes. But again, we are encouraging you, we're urging you, we're imploring you to call up 877-500-5266 to support KBOO Community Radio.
Yes, that's what we're doing. Urging, imploring. We're not begging yet, but it's not beneath us.
It's not begging. It's an investment. It's an investment in your future and your family's future. It really is. 877-500-5266. We have new friends. We have friends to thank.
We do. We want to thank Kelly from Salem and also Cole from Southwest Portland, both of whom called up to renew their memberships. Thank you so much for supporting KBOO.
There's another thing we wanted to do, and I know this is a pledge pitch, but we've all wanted to do it. Yay, Chelsea Manning! Chelsea Manning!
Hey!
Woo! We're going to get to the Chelsea Manning story. Very important story. But we've just started our spring membership drive. We're encouraging people to go get your communications device and call us at 877-500-5266. Make a contribution of $20 a month to this radio station. That's our goal, because for $20 a month, you can get tickets to the Friday speech by Chris Hedges, who we're listening to, speaking with Paul Rowland, just the kind of programming that we do all the time around here. That's who we're listening to right now. So for $20 a month, you could either go see the Friday, May 26th speech by Chris Hedges, or you could see the Saturday afternoon Chris Hedges and Joe Sacco conversation. Dude, I'm saying that one right there has really got my attention. And of course, they're going to be talking about stopping fascism. Stopping fascism. And having said that, 877-500-5266. I know a lot of people listening right now are already members. So we want to encourage someone to give a gift membership to the new FBI acting director.
Yes.
His name is Andrew G. McCabe.
Let's welcome him to his new job.
Yeah, we have a lot of amazing KBOO members, including Barack Obama. I do believe that Donald Trump is already a member. But you can give a gift membership if you are already a member. And so if somebody wants to go out there and get Andrew G. McCabe signed up, he'll start getting, emails and stuff from KBOO. He'll be educated about what's on our programming. I have a feeling he might actually tune in and really enjoy it.
I think he would. He may learn a few things, that he doesn't learn inside the Beltway.
And I bet he really likes salsa music.
Who doesn't, right? Speaking of salsa music, do you know where you can listen to it?
KBOO.
So pick up the phone, 877-500-5266. Become a member of this radio station that enriches your life, makes you a more informed citizen, and gets you up off your couch to boogie.
And it's true. And I'm Lisa. I'm here with Abe. We might have gotten so excited we forgot to mention that. We are, we have active Nazis in our region. Right? We had a young African-American man run over and killed by white supremacists in Gresham just a few months ago. So as you're listening to Christopher Hedges talking about stopping fascism, he's in there having a live conversation with Paul Rowland. We're talking about our neighborhoods now. Okay. They're having a deep intellectual talk about the roots of these ideologies, but we're talking about what's happening right outside. And if you want to actually invest in the media outlet that actually discusses where that really came from, you're going to give us a call, 877-500-5266, or come in person. We're at 20 Southeast 8th in Portland, Oregon. What else?
Well, for a pledge of $20 a month, we'll give you a pair of tickets to one of Chris Hedges' 2 upcoming appearances here in Portland at the end of this month.
All right, is it time to go back? It's time to go back, and thanks to everyone who has called.
Okay, and you've been hearing repeatedly, but Chris Hedges, who I'm speaking with on the phone, will be here May 26th and 27th at the Aladdin Theater. Go to KBOO.FM, both to click on donate and support the station and to find out more information about those events. Coming up this morning on KBOO at Wednesday, at 9 on Political Perspectives, Chris Hedges will be back with a 2015 speech, Moral Imperatives. At 10, Chris Andre hosts a special Air Cascade interview with former CIA operative John Kiri-Ah-Koo, who spent 2 years in federal prison for disclosing U.S. torture techniques. At 10:30, it's Flashpoints with Dennis Bernstein. At 11, the Food Show talks to the operators of Happiness Family Farms and Village Gardens, as well as organizers of the St. John's and New Columbia Farmers Markets coming this season. And I don't need to remind you that we support your generous support for this station, and we are in our membership drive. So give us a call. So let's get back to what we were just saying, Chris, about this wedge between, which stems from, it goes back to the, war against dissidents, the war against any site of opposition to slavery, the war against Native peoples who resisted colonization continues, as you mentioned, with the war against labor, but especially amped up after the 1960s, which was, I think you and I agree, perhaps the last real mass, very chaotic, but mass resistance in various forms. And the corporate state really learned a lot of lessons from that and set into place a lot of the institutions that led to what we see now with the...
Right. Well, that triggered the corporate coup d'etat, the blueprint being the 1971 Lewis Powell memo. And they have succeeded. It's over. They've won. We've lost. So the failure of the liberal class to stand up for democratic values and democratic institutions, the selling out of the liberal class epitomized by figures like the Clintons, like Barack Obama, who do corporate bidding, but speak in the traditional feel your pain language of liberalism, has been catastrophic. When liberal institutions cease to function. I watched this in the former Yugoslavia, but it was also true in Weimar. It was Dostoevsky's obsession, and Dostoevsky wrote in The Idiot, in The Underground Man, that it produced a political climate of nihilism. So what happens is that a frustrated population, and this is precisely why Clinton lost the election, had nothing to do with Russia or with Comey. They not only turn, and Richard Rorty actually writes about this in his last book, Achieving Our Country, they not only turn on these faux liberal figures like Clinton or Obama, but they also turn on the supposed liberal values that they champion. Now, they don't actually champion these values. They speak in the language of inclusivity and tolerance, but their idea of, for instance, feminism or multiculturalism is, as Cornel West says, to point a president like Obama who's just a black mascot for Wall Street. It's not about empowering the African American community, 3/4 of which are living in conditions far worse than when King marched on Selma. It's not about empowering oppressed women like the great feminist Andrea Dworkin fought for. It's about having a woman CEO at Hewlett Packard, or a woman senator, or a woman president. And so it's inverted the value system. And this is what we've seen with Trump. People are turning against argue, and I don't. I mean, their anger is legitimate against a liberal elites that sold them out in places like Berkeley and San Francisco and New York, who profited from this neoliberal system and thrust now over half the country into poverty and great frustration and anxiety. And Clinton, Bill Clinton in particular, kind of started that process, and it worked. I mean, those lies and that subterfuge worked for a while, but don't work anymore.
So the response I gave on air about the most recent black bloc incident at a demonstration in Portland just a couple weeks ago was neither to defend it nor to criticize it, but to point out that my feeling is that these are young people who've, in the past 5 years seen this massive, utter apocalyptic gusher of oil in the Gulf. They've seen Fukushima. They've seen the smashing of the Occupy movement. They've seen the rise of the Black Lives Matter and the continuing just endless image of people of color killed by police. And not to mention the specter of global warming. These are, I'm
with them. I'm with them on all that.
Right.
I only care about what works.
No, I understand.
I want to take these people out, and I don't want to play into their hands. These kinds of tactics are a gift.
Well, let me just make my point.
What happens at Berkeley? What happens at when a few thousand people protest and a handful of people throw rocks, and what gets broadcast around the country?
Right.
The peaceful demonstrators are completely blanked out.
Well, let me just finish the point though. Is that it's the sense of urgency my feeling is we need a cutting edge. We need a cutting edge that feels a sense of urgency that can impel people to take things further, and we need that not to be separated from the larger masses of people. So the problem is this wedge that's been created between the larger mass of the people who might identify themselves as liberal and the radical cutting edge. That's the problem.
I don't identify myself as liberal.
No, I realize that. What I'm saying is the problem seems to be is that people are. It's almost like look at the Weather Underground. It was also their sense of frustration.
The Weather Underground destroyed the largest it was the largest anti-war movement in the country. And when Nixon started bombing Cambodia, that movement had disintegrated courtesy of the Weather Underground.
Well, but they were also part of the radical cutting edge that led to the burgeoning of the movement in the 60s, too. So it's a paradox.
They came out at the end of the 60s.
No, but they were some of the
Underground didn't get formed until the 70s.
No, but they were some of the people who early on were part. Some of them came out of some of them were involved in the the Mississippi Summer. Anyway,
they came out of the SDS.
Right.
Well, but I think you look back on the Weather Underground and it kind of validates my point that what frightened Nixon, it's in Kissinger's memoirs. I mean, I think it's 71 or something. There's a gigantic tens of thousands of people surrounding the White House. Nixon has put empty city buses and a kind of cordon all the way around the White House, and he's looking out the window, and he's wringing his hands going, Henry, they're going to break through the barricades and get us. Well, that's where we want people in power to be. A handful of people throwing rocks, and they love that. They love it. The other Weather Underground, that's great. I mean, I'm with Daniel Berrigan. I come out of that. I think that these forces are they make it extremely difficult for us to mobilize the kinds of numbers that we need to bring these people down. We need to surround Congress for days on end. We need massive numbers.
I just don't see those numbers happening. I just don't see it coming into being.
Well, then we're finished, because then we're done. But nobody saw Eastern Europe happening. I mean, in Leipzig, I was there in East Germany. You had 70, they all came out of Lutheran church, walking around Leipzig with candles, and next thing you know, you've got 500,000 people in Alexanderplatz. Same thing in Czechoslovakia.
Well, on that
500,000 people night after night. That's the way it works. If we can't achieve that, and I am not saying we can, but if we can achieve that, then we're finished.
Well, we're
not going to. I mean, I spent 20 years overseas. I know how violent the state is. We have 60,000 members in the special forces alone. I've watched these people work. They're death squads. And like any empire that starts to disintegrate, the forms of control that they use on the outer reaches of empire, when they need them, will be brought back to the inner reaches of empire. We're already seeing it. Militarized drones, wholesale surveillance, stripping away of due process and habeas corpus, militarized police that kill with impunity. I know the tools of empire. I know how vicious and violent it is. And if these people will use it, and they'll look for an excuse to use it, and we can't give them one.
Okay. Well, we got a break. This is Membership Drive. You're listening to a special interview with Chris Hedges, who will be here in a week and a half. You can get some tickets to go see him if you call 877-500-5266.
What a conversation we're listening to right now. This is blowing my little mind.
It is.
It is blown all over Pledge Central right now.
But it's still a nice place to visit, though, because this is our spring.
We're going to have it
drive.
cleaned up in no time.
We're inviting you to make a contribution to this radio station to invest in the work that we do here. I'm a volunteer. Abe is a volunteer. Over on the phones in there is a volunteer. Everybody's a volunteer in here. And when you call 877-500-5266, your money goes so far, in part because we're passionate about being real about what we do here in the radio station. Yes?
We really want to extend our appreciation to Dean from Corvallis, who called up to renew their membership. And Dean adds this note that they appreciate Paul, and we appreciate Paul. And I'm guessing that if you listen to Paul's show, you also appreciate Paul. There's a real easy way to show that appreciation, Lisa. How do you do it?
You pick up your phone and you type out 877-500-5266. You talk to one of our incredible volunteers here that are answering phones. You pledge to give KBOO $20 a month, and we give you a free pair of tickets to Chris Hedges and Joe Sacco having a conversation about how to stop fascism that's happening this Saturday afternoon, and you bring your kid. That's one way to do it. You can also go online to the website, kboo.fm, or come in person to 20 Southeast 8th. We already mentioned that later on this morning, we're going to have John Kiriakou, the former CIA agent, live on the air with Chris Andre in the 10 o'clock hour. This is an amazing day of programming where you have truly informed radical voices basically giving an analysis of what's going on around you. And this is the kind of thing that's very difficult to find in corporate financed media. So 877-500-5266. Make a $20 contribution per month. And this is your radio station, dude.
That's right. We don't have to worry about offending the sensibilities of our advertisers because we have no advertisers. We have you. We have our members. You are what makes this radio station go. It is a very simple, very direct relationship. You pick up the phone, you call 877-500-5266, and you help keep this station on the air. That's how it works. It's beautiful.
It's more than that too, Abe, because when you do pick up the phone, 877-500-5266, you make a contribution to KBOO Community Radio. That makes you entitled to vote in our board of directors elections. You actually become a part of a community that does things.
Oh, the power.
It's kind of like that. And, you know, when you make that contribution, you come in person. We're at 20 Southeast 8th. If you come soon, I'll toast a bagel for you. You see that your investment makes waves that hold space for other progressives. We have to wrap it up. We have one line open, 877-500-5266. Thanks everyone who has called. And we're going to go back to our programming.
All right. And Chris, we got to wrap up as it is. Thank you so much for being here. We really look forward to seeing you in person in a week and a half.
Great. And let me just throw out, for people who don't know Joe Sacco, he is, hope he's not listening, I'll never hear the end of it. No, the guy's a genius. He's one of the finest. He's created a whole new medium through essentially his drawing and his reporting, which is amazingly rigorous and brilliant. I've watched him at work. He's one of the most remarkable writers, journalists, thinkers in the country.
And he'll be on Saturday, and you're speaking by yourself on Friday, May 26th, and you and Joe Sacco will be at 2 p.m. at Aladdin Theater on May 27th.